That was a few years back, right?
Okay,
52,
we're recording.
52.
We are recording. But Sarah was supposed to call in.
Yeah, Sarah said she was gonna
Recording in progress.
join us. All right, wanna start this thing? We have some interesting stuff today. Okay. So I guess it's a roll call of attending members. Identify who you are, please. And I'd like to recognize our newest member, Mr. James, Dr. James Weinstein. Welcome as a member.
I don't have the A anymore.
Yes, you go from A to M. Okay. Scott, David, Dick? I'm over in the far end, and Sarah's not here.
Nope.
Sarah's here, not here.
Nope, just us.
Okay. If we have to vote on anything between now and when Sarah arrives, it would seem to me that Jane, you would be a voting person this evening. But as soon as Sarah shows up, sorry, it's okay. The public is very large this evening, so we're not going to have any of that. But review approved minutes of of our March 20 meeting. Any adjustments, changes? I hear a motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That was easy. No public, we're already on to our 7:15, and it's only 5 after. So good guy, good job, guys. All right. David put these on the agenda just cause.
Yep.
To make sure that we would talk about them or not talk about them or think about them. Do we want to talk about them this evening or not?
Maybe at least
Hmm?
explain them, and
What's that?
maybe at least explain them.
Okay, well, maybe we should say that. This is, we had a conversation around what things we might consider doing, and I think we had been asked by the town assessor whether or not we were going to do anything relative to the zoning map to be more clear on some of the delineations of the existing 500-foot boundary, which identifies from 16 and 16A what's considered the village district. We have currently 2 districts. In Jackson, the village district is 500-foot corridor on either side of 16 and 16A. Everything else is the rural residential. Where we've had issues apparently has been around lots that are bifurcated by the 500-foot line as to whether or not they should be considered village or residential. And I think our practice has been to indicate that if the building or some of the buildings of the property are within the village district, then all of the buildings in that property would be considered part of the village district. But that if there is no building within the village district, then it would be considered to be rural residential. That's, I think, how we've been practicing when we have a bifurcation. So that if your driveway apron is within 500 feet, but your house is another quarter of a mile the other way, you're still in the rural residential district. But, for example, in the Wentworth condominiums, where half of them are, I don't know, half, maybe a third of them are within the village district, and the remainder would be outside the 500-foot. We've considered that it is the entire property of the condominium complex as being one property, and therefore qualified as being part of the village district. Similarly, there's another property that's up
Old Jackson Road.
I forget which one it is. It's the other side of.
Old Jackson Road.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the condominiums
Oh.
that are the townhouses that are up past Dana Place on the right. Again, 80% of the buildings are within the 500 feet, and there's maybe 4 or 5 units that aren't. And so it doesn't make sense to say, okay, yeah, you neighbor, you get to do whatever, and the other person doesn't. Similarly, I think we have the same issue with Nesselnook. Again, I don't think all the condominiums that are there are within 500 feet of Route 16. But certainly the entrance to it is, and a good number of the buildings are. So, I think at a minimum, what we should address this year is to at least put in writing what we've been practicing relative to that, so that there's no question around it, and we agree to it, and then make sure that if it's something that we need to go in front of the town for a vote, I don't know. We can ask our legal schmiegel to do determination of that. And if it does, we can, put it before the town. But I think we learned that if we agree to that and we vote on it, between now and the time that we would actually go before the town, that would be the actual regulation.
Because you're right, because it's very vague in here.
It's
just says-
exceptionally vague.
Right. Yeah, because it says in line of public 16 and 16A, 500 feet on either side, and all land between said routes in the town of Jackson should be called the official zoning map as a village district.
That one.
So if the driveway is there, but there's no structure, and the structure is 1,000 feet,
Mhm.
we would define that as you're in the rural residential, even though some of your property is.
Right.
To clarify for me.
Yeah.
Would make it easier on the short-term rentals.
Yeah, I think similarly, I think there is precedent for that in terms of how you handle things. Back where we used to live in Connecticut, there was a house that was on the line between two cities, and the bedrooms were in one city, and the rest of the house was in, and one of the bedrooms was in the other. And so determining whether or not the kids would go to school in one town versus the other, and who got taxed on what. And what happened is of course that the town that had the bedrooms wanted to tax that part of the house. And the people who owned the house, originally it was like a farm. They used to have a lot more property attached to it. But the house was there, and So they sent their kids to the school to the other town, which was a better school system. I can turn that off. Nobody ever calls me. All right,
Is it Sarah?
I don't know, could be.
I just wondered if she's calling.
Nice.
I'm gonna check to see if this is. Hello? Yeah. Yes, hi Sarah. Okay, I'm going to end up having David send you another invite. Okay? Bye. Good thing I took that.
Recording stopped.
So, in that vein, one of the discussions will be what happens if they build a new structure in the village district with the original structure outside. What happens? Do you then extend to the house, or do you
It's a great
put
question.
Yeah, I think we should discuss that.
Especially with the possibility of ADUs being more liberal. I think right now, what's being talked about in the legislature is not different from what we allow, which is a detached ADU. We don't,
Isn't there a multiple ADU?
well, they're talking about allowing
Yeah.
two ADUs as
Yeah, I
opposed
think
to
we're as liberal or more liberal.
Yeah. But the idea of having a detached ADU, to your point, if they were to build one that was in the, then the question would be, would both apply?
Right.
Darned if I could answer that question right now. Even logically.
Do not depend on logic.
Well, couldn't you define it as primary?
Right.
For our rooms, it's the primary living
Yeah,
structure,
you could.
not
Yeah,
an.
well, you could, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, so,
We'd have to be specific. So, yeah, we have something to talk about. Anyway, that's one of the projects for us to talk about.
So on the Nesselnook access, are all of the houses before Nesselnook itself in the village district?
No, I mean, the condos that are built.
Yeah, but I'm talking about this,
The
the street heading up to,
Yeah, that's within 500 feet.
okay. Then no part of the driveway to Nesselnook is part of the 500 feet?
I would
Recording
say,
in progress.
I would say that most of that area,
Is outside it?
it would be, you'd have to get out your
Yeah.
yardstick.
Some of those condos extend this way,
Yeah,
it seems.
I don't know the answer to your question.
Because the other way off of 16, the river's in between. I mean, it would still be 500 feet, but the river's in the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just clarifying the verbiage for the tax assessor in the sense that primary resident is wherever that sits.
Yeah, we'll have some work to do, and then the question is whether or not anything we say is something that we can actually do.
Well, that's why he gets the big bucks. That's why the lawyer's there.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, just because we think it doesn't mean you can do it, which we learned an awful lot with our short-term rental stuff.
And we learn from our neighbors.
Well, after watching Law and Order, I withdraw my question.
Hey, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot. A lot of things I don't know. I could tell you all day how much I don't know. Whew. All right, and discussion on current building codes, and I don't think I want to talk about that without Kevin being here. We thought he was gonna be here this evening, but obviously he has another priority.
He does like the idea though,
Yeah.
because I talked to him yesterday and today.
Yeah.
I mean, he likes the concept, so,
Of taking a review
Yes.
and looking at it. I don't think we wish to move to, I think when we were looking at, Sarah's in the waiting room. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Sorry.
Okay.
Welcome. I want to at this moment mention that Sarah has arrived at our meeting. Therefore, you are now a voting member, and Jane is relegated to being an alternate, a non-voting member,
Okay.
because we're all here.
Okay.
She can still make whatever smart comment she wants to. Okay, so yeah, current building codes, I think it's something when we were looking at this briefly last November, and someone was saying that, oh yeah, there's these wonderful bits about site disturbance and blasting. And we were looking on the internet, and there's a town in the southern part of the state that has a building code document that's over 500 pages. That's their town document, with a lot of detail about what you can and cannot do. And we don't want to do that. They had a 16-page section on site disturbance. And I think we managed to do ours in 1 page.
yeah.
So, yeah, it would be useful to take a look at them, and I think we really would need Kevin available to help us with that, and he really should be our consultant. Speaking of building codes, and not projects for 2025, but for 2024, we had a vote that allowed the new language, and you offered that out just before we met
Yes.
today.
Yes.
I took a look at what you provided. It did not have the correct language for one of the sections. You know, if you saw, you have typos all over the place.
Oh, I just copied what was in from the, that we put into the thing.
Nope, it's not.
Okay. Let me look
It looks like you did a cut and paste that didn't cut and paste
properly.
properly.
Okay. Okay, I'll redo that and send it.
So I sent you a note on it. I copied everybody.
Okay.
But with that change, I don't know that we need to vote on that.
No, it was more feedback, not vote.
Okay.
It was more feedback, so I appreciate your feedback, but,
Okay.
before we give it to you.
I don't know if anybody saw the emails just before we came here.
I saw it, but I didn't get a chance
Ah,
to read it.
okay. Bottom line, it was the first, the first section on that, the 4.1.
Oh, I know what I did, okay.
And was this something that went through at the town meeting? Right, this,
No, I know what I did. I got distracted and I didn't finish that first paragraph.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did a cut and paste that didn't quite cut and paste properly. And that is that,
Yep. Yep, I see what I did. Okay. It's 4161.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so, Sarah, if you want to take another look at that as well, just to make sure that because I looked at it, the document that David sent out. I can't look at it without bringing it into Apple World, and it seems to reformat it, so I'm not exactly sure whether or not the formatting's good, or if it's just Apple reformatting it and it doesn't look right to me.
It is weird, because I opened it up in Word and it did the same strange formatting thing, so I'm not sure what version she used.
Okay,
Because she sent me the last one.
all right,
in
yeah.
Word, and I've just updated hers. So
All right,
before
so-
that, I'll make sure the
you
formatting
could-
is right. I'm just putting verbiage.
Okay, if you will ensure that it looks right
Yes.
before we print
Julie
it, that
will,
would be
Julie
great.
will also. Julie will also.
All right.
Will be very good at doing that too.
That's great.
David,
Yeah.
did you just update the sections that were
Yes.
in on the ballot? You didn't touch anything else?
I didn't touch anything else.
Yeah, but
But the formatting got screwed up throughout the whole document when I opened it up.
Right, so I may have the document, regular formatting, because I've gone back and forth with her on
Okay.
with the document.
Okay.
All right, the only other comment I would have is I'm not sure if you indicated the amended date for the 4.1.6.
Not yet, because I haven't finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the only other thing I think that was
The short-term
outstanding.
rental was done, but I was just working on the site disturbance.
Okay.
And I got distracted.
Okay.
You wanted feedback, you got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I actually read the darn stuff. All right, any further discussion before we move to short-term rental? Yes, sir.
To promote a forum for all departments to coordinate money issues. Just a thought to see if we can get people to come together before all the individual entities put in their money requests, just to see if we can coordinate a little bit. So we don't have that, it's almost a hitch in the system if we don't have some idea what the other departments are asking for.
Okay, when you're saying departments, are you referring to
School, highway, fire, police.
all right, so select board,
Office.
the select board's responsible for most of that. And
Well, we can, it's just a thought, but
I know, I'm listening.
we could do something towards promoting the idea of bringing the different departments together. Whether we do it, come on in, Jay, come on in, come on down.
Yeah, but is that the job of the planning board?
I think if we were to attach it to the master plan, that it would be. In order to, or the CHIP, in order to do that successfully,
Yeah.
we might see that as an avenue towards.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking about the RSAs that actually inform what we can and do and what we're responsible for relative to the select board. And what you're describing to me suggests other than the capital improvement plan
Yeah.
program, that would be something that the select board should be responsible for doing. And we don't have, we're not in an SB2, for example, that has a budget committee.
Right.
And if we did, if we were, and we did, then that would be one place where something like that could be potentially looked at and balanced. But even that is not a place where it's proactive, it's more reactive. So I'm not sure we really have a good venue or avenue for that.
A mandate to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree that's a good thing. But you might want to talk to your select board members about that. Oh,
You're talking about like operating budgets that go into the town report, or are you talking about like capital improvement plan ideas? Or-
I was thinking more of the capital improvement
Okay,
ideas because that's where it starts.
yeah. Right. Because the the operating budget, especially out of this, is a nil.
yeah,
I think that, well, is the capital improvement plan done and off the table and behind us now, or is that
well,
still?
it's supposed to be, it can be a living document.
Is it fluid again this year, or?
I don't, I mean, we put something together in December, we actually have published something. We haven't presented it
Right.
necessarily, but we have one that's been completed. And we were really hoping that we have some input from the school board, which we did not get before we finalized it, but we're not gonna get that.
Well, so I guess I feel like Dick's idea has a lot of merit, in my personal opinion. It would be nice to have some sort of a scheduled night far enough out so that, every possible contributor to a capital improvement idea had enough, from the library to the school and everybody in between, could all come together and coalesce around that issue for one evening. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Dick. It seems like it is.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect idea for the planning board. Let's have a 3-hour work session. Are you gonna be here? If not, can you get a representative that can articulate what you want and how much you see it costing? And so the work is done by others, and it could almost be a vetting. Why do you need it? How do you know it costs that much? Well, we had somebody come in and give us a quote, and that's merit. Well, it just seems like that's what it would cost, to really flesh out what goes into the capital improvement plan and why and how much it'll cost. I mean, that can all help with prioritizing those things.
It would clearly make it a living document then,
Yeah.
because it would be changing as we meet and be updated if something came up.
I think if the select board were to authorize us to do that, we could do that.
Well, if you had all the parties together and agreeable that the goal is to complete this document by October 15th, whatever day it is, then you're working on a deadline, and you all understand that you're looking for something completed for this year that can then be
Right.
presented to the board.
If the select board is part of it, wouldn't it be just shorter to have the select board call everybody together? I mean, it's sort of the same thing. I mean, I agree, it can inform both capital improvements plan and also the operating budget, because who's looking for what. And it might be that having that sort of meeting would make some of the parties that haven't given us information like we want, a little bit more compelled to participate. But if the select board needs to authorize us to put together a meeting that includes the select boards, it seems like it's shorter to just have the select board.
Well, Mike,
Great, that meeting.
again, I don't know, I don't know enough about it, but what I do know is that when we do a capital improvement program, that is in the RSA, that we actually can take information from both the town and from the school board. Whereas there's nothing in the RSAs that authorize the select board to compel the school board to provide information. Certainly, anybody and everybody can have a town meeting, joint meetings or something that could be done. But that would, I think, to your point, I think it would be the select board asking for it to be done. I don't think there's anything in the RSAs that compels anybody to do any of that.
No, and when I said compel, I meant, they might just feel more compelled to, be part of that sort of event, as opposed to us going to them and saying, can you tell us what you're gonna need? And sure, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
It just seems like it'd be hard for them to justify skipping the event,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not compelling that they would be required by the state.
If you guys think it's a great idea, then maybe that's something for the select board to talk about.
Well, I like the collaborative approach.
Yeah.
And I like taking collective action because then there's collective ownership and some sense of unity moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, as I remember it, the school district was a regular topic of discussion throughout the capital improvement plan attempt. And and it never did get settled, and maybe they just had a year that they couldn't get to it, I don't know, but.
Well, they truly had a conflict this past year.
Yeah.
And the conflict largely was associated with the issue with Conway School System, SAU 9, and whether or not they needed to deal with that. And they also had turnover in their group.
Had what?
Turnover.
Oh, yeah.
People deciding that they no longer wish to participate.
Yeah.
And that disrupted whatever flow they had, any rhythm they had in terms of getting at some things.
Well, we can put it on the next agenda, a meeting. Well, I won't be the next, but it can still be a topic of discussion.
Or
It's
some
April
next meeting.
22nd.
Yeah, I don't think it's, time sensitive. I think
Yeah,
if it
No.
can happen, when it can happen, that'd be good.
yeah. As we go through, I think next year we're going to do the master plan. I think that's a topic of conversation that we can certainly suggest in the plan that be something that we do.
We can call it a summit.
Summit.
Yeah, but do you get to go where? Yeah.
Can we have a czar?
So in a perfect world, who would this board like to see in the room? School, library,
Yeah,
Highway,
Highway, yeah.
police, fire, everything that's
And
part
an
of the library.
office.
The library, the office.
This office.
Historical Society. Historical Society.
Then we
historical
could do the
society.
water. district.
Conservation.
That's okay. Well, we could do it in conjunction, or not conjunction, but kind of could be the prep for the master plan. Some discussions that come out of that can
Yeah.
actually, because I was just reading that the other day, that whole document.
yeah.
It does, because I'm thinking it does show everybody in that that you just mentioned in that document.
Like, it's for sure gonna be a working session for the master plan anyway. So, I mean, we can maybe initiate it as part of that.
In preparation of the master plan for next year.
You know, it would be nice to get the system, the infrastructure we're gonna to use
Yeah,
in place before summer.
Yes.
I think a lot of times meeting in the summer is difficult, but if we know what we want to hit the ground running with right after Labor Day, that should give us enough time, and maybe we would want to identify a level of commitment that would a representative could expect to need to make. We're gonna meet monthly, we're gonna meet every other week, starting after Labor Day. What do we foresee, how do we foresee the lift needing to what that lift would be and what it should look like? You know, getting all that stuff fleshed out before the middle of June would then have us, I think, pretty organized, do something. But my experience with stuff is that, you know, you're gonna take on something, a big project like this, and come together once a month.
not happening.
It's really not often enough to get in the swing of things sometimes. Not to say that it couldn't be, but it would seem like it would be a twice a month need, every other week between September and Thanksgiving. And,
Yeah, maybe a series, 4 or 5 meetings and,
yeah,
No, that makes sense because it takes the initial meeting to get people thinking about it and then time in between a meeting to hash it out in their own minds, bring it back to a meeting. I think that's,
But if we establish I wouldn't say the protocol, but if we establish the purpose in June, that also gives them 2 months to think about it, and so they're not coming to September. It's fresh. I mean, we should set up some parameters so they're prepared and come with something in September, not start off in September.
I mean, the group dynamic is gonna be just as important as the content. You know, it's an oversimplification to say, oh, form, storm, norm, and perform. I mean, there's more to it than that, but you have to go through learning how to function together if you're gonna produce anything worthwhile. Just the experience of being in the same room and working it out.
yeah. Part of the difficulty, I think, in what you're describing is that the statutory arrangement that's set for small towns, I think doesn't have a lot of the mechanics of a larger, like an SB2 or a city arrangement. And part of that is because I think they assume that people talk in a small town, that you actually have conversations amongst everyone, and it doesn't necessarily happen.
And the goal of the forming this group would be solidifying the capital improvement plan, or is there a more overarching goal, trying to tie things in together with the master plan, which I don't even know what that looks like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 opportunities. One is that the more immediate opportunity certainly is for your operations budget, your annual budget. And if there's something that might be an uptick, which is not large enough to be in a capital improvement plan, or if it's something that's come up, if you will, either because it's something new or something's changed. There's that. There's obviously the capital improvement plan process that you're looking at a 10-year window. Um, And the other is the master plan, which is also a 10-year window of describing not just what you think in front of you, but things that aren't, things that you are, woulda, shoulda, coulda, or wishful thinking kinds of things, more platitudes sometimes, about where we should be getting to. And some of those are pie in the sky, like, maybe we should be free of all oil products by, 2040 or something, I don't know. I don't know, I'm just making things up. But the master plan has that kind of feel to it. It has that kind of feel of things that you aspire to, but may not necessarily be able to obtain. For example, balancing affordable housing, community housing, with conservation of property. Those two tend to juxtapose in different ways for different folks. And yet both of them are wonderful ideas and wonderful things that should happen. Yeah, I mean, we have 3 different kinds of levels of things that possibly can be addressed or looked at. Good thought.
Good.
Perfect. It's already started. No,
Since
just
it's your idea,
the
you can
discussion.
lead it.
Yeah.
And you can lead it.
Well, I
Only if there's beer and pizza.
Dick has a unique perspective. I'm sorry. He's sat in my chair. He's sat in the select board's chair. You've sat in all the chairs, and you've been around for a year or 2 longer than a lot of us. And so, yeah, you've got a great perspective.
He's a visionary.
But I have an idea of needs,
Yeah.
and I think this is a discussion that we really need as a town.
Yeah.
We've gone through charrettes and many different ways of talking about this, but I think we need to sit down and really get serious about, where's the money going?
Yeah.
Would you feel like one representative from each of those entities we identified would be good, or just as a spokesman? And then obviously it'll be a public meeting, so whoever wants to come can.
Right, I think we should try to get one from each entity,
Yeah,
but then, come on, folks,
a voice,
yeah.
and then whoever else wants to be in the room for comments.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe you impanel the primary from each, and then everybody can join in for comment.
Mhm.
Have some fun with it.
So much for this year being a light lift. Huh?
Hey, you got past the fire station. Come on, you gotta have something to do.
Gotta have some challenge.
I
Yeah.
don't want to leave, I'm starting to tear again.
Oh, fun. All right, short-term rental application.
This is an interesting one.
We have one. I don't know if anybody looked at the material. Did anybody look at the material?
Well-
It's a very interesting one.
If you'd said this is an interesting one, then I would have.
Well, it started off as actually, they were a violator. They got a notice of a violation that they were renting, without a conditional use permit, and they responded to that. Technically they responded later than they were supposed to, but they did. But the interesting part of this is that the tax card says 3 bedrooms. Their advertisement says 4. And I can't find anything in this tax card or any of their description of why they think they have 4 bedrooms.
And their ad also says sleeps 12.
And it sleeps 12, yeah, so the sleeping is.
So they have 3 bedrooms, not 4, and sleeps 12, which
Nine.
is,
That's still beyond,
Yes,
It's
it would be
beyond
8
even
with
with,
four
8 would be the 3, so it's 4 beyond.
Well, I mean, with our new, with the amendment, it's pretty clear that it's 3 bedrooms.
Yes, no, I mean, I was looking to see, do they think did they rehab their basement and they think that's a bedroom, but it's not listed here? I can't see anything where they.
well,
think-
if you take a look at the tax card, they have a lot more bathrooms than they have bedrooms.
Yes, they do.
And it's highly likely that they may have spaces that, and they do in the ad, they say they have X number of beds available that would sleep 12. So it sleeps 12. And it's like, no, that's not the way our ordinance works.
you shouldn't advertise that.
So their ad is totally out of compliance.
Their ad is, but also, they also indicate that there should be no limit, because I think they think they're in a, this, if you didn't look at the address, this is the house that's above the transfer station. It's that facility, that building that's up there. So they wrote no limit as the number of people that pay rentals, because I think they think that's a commercial district.
Well, there's always a limit to number of people in bedrooms.
No, the
rentals.
limit was the number of rentals.
Oh,
They
I
have
thought
no
you
limit on rentals.
said, I thought you said no limit on people.
No, no limit on rentals is what they think. Is that commercial?
Are they, well, we'll have to look at the 500-foot mark.
I looked at the lot lines, the properties that are between 16 and there's over 1,000 feet of property line before you get to their property line.
So that's the second issue.
So that would be more than 500 feet, I think, yeah.
500 feet. So that's the second issue. I saw both of them.
Were they renting prior to?
I think these are new owners.
Yeah.
Because the tax card shows that they must have recently purchased this, because the last owner bought it in September of last year, so I think they just bought it.
No.
You know that.
Right, so our job then is to accept the application, but with advisement to
Yep.
select board members that there's a few things that, and you guys are aware, obviously, that that these were folks who were violating, because it's been in your minutes that you noticed them. This is the same property that you noticed. It said they were violating the short-term rental by not having a conditional use permit.
That's correct.
This is the same property,
That's correct.
so
Yeah.
they're submitting, they're making the submission, they've done that, that's good, but there's a lot of issues around the submission.
And so they did place an ad with?
Yes.
So that'd be like a second violation, correct?
I think what constituted initial violation, I couldn't swear to it, was the fact that we noticed there was an ad.
Right.
For the house. And
Right,
that's-
but they're both operating without a conditional use permit and advertising more bedrooms than our ordinance allows. Is that too?
Those are 2 violations, but I don't think we cited them for a second violation. It was all, I think, lumped into.
I'm just wondering whether they get delayed as to when they can reapply for a conditional use permit.
Yeah,
I mean,
according to
they
your,
clearly don't have any respect for the ordinance that we have in place.
It.
Or they're
could be
just
they
not,
don't
they're just not
understand.
aware, I mean, they're new folks, and they just may not know.
Well, their actions since they've been informed have not.
Yeah, I don't know if the ad was, what they had, no permit, just,
What was the actual violation?
excuse me?
What was the violation?
Well, there's 2 things. One is that you're required, if you have a short-term rental, to have a conditional use permit.
Okay,
They don't.
And today, how could you think that a town probably doesn't have a short-term rental ordinance? I mean, it's such a hot topic that I don't think you can say, oh, I just didn't know. Ignorance is not.
There's never an
It's not
excuse.
defensible in legal sense, but, you know, there's an awful lot of it around.
True.
I mean, I'm ignorant of a lot of things.
You can't pick up a newspaper today without reading something about short-term rentals.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things I just don't know.
I know. A lot of people skim by.
And a lot
I'm
of
sure
folks
you would,
just
yeah.
would, and if you asked, they would say, I just didn't know.
Maybe they thought they were in Bartlett.
Well, they might think they're in Bartlett, and well,
That would have explained that.
they're pretty close to Bartlett, I think, yeah.
Oh, they're right close to it, but what about the room and meals tax? They weren't paying, I'm sure.
No, they had to apply for it.
Yeah.
They had to apply for it. They didn't have meals. And that was one of our attorney, when they spoke to them, found that they didn't have one of those also. So they applied for that.
Didn't have what?
Didn't have a meals and sales tax. They didn't have that.
Oh, okay.
So our attorney, when they spoke to these people, indicated that they didn't have one and they had applied, they were applying for one.
Oh,
So they were
okay.
in violation by the state also.
But maybe they didn't know.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, the only violations that were quoted in the letter that they gave was the fact that they were operating without a conditional use permit. That's the only violation we said in our letter to them. Because they quote the two sections of the ordinance that they're in violation, and both of them have to do with operating without a conditional use permit. So there was no issue.
So I move that we accept the application with a recommendation, is that the right word, to the select board that it not be approved for a conditional use permit. So,
I have a motion
One
to
second.
accept with comments relative to the limit and to the inappropriate advertising. I have a second. I have a second, Mr. Roscoe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Sarah, you and I?
I am abstaining because I don't have the information.
Okay, so you're gonna abstain?
Abstain.
You did receive a copy of this, David did send it out.
And I haven't had the chance to open.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, tried to open it on my phone. It didn't work.
Oh, open it on your phone, no way,
No way.
No, because these are PDFs.
no
she
way.
sends us.
All right, so it's not unanimous, it is, it's only 6-0-1.
Yep.
Thanks, Sarah. I seem to think that the last thing that's on the agenda is still waiting 3 minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I make the motion.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor? Aye.
Captain.
Thank you, gentlemen and
Thank
ladies.
you.
Phil, when I looked up districts in Jackson, what often appears is historic
Recording
district.
stopped.
Now, is the historic district a separate district in Jackson, or is it just sort of an informal thing based upon the age of?
We have nothing in our ordinance which indicates an historic district.
Yeah, when I just was looking